I never believed in curses until the night my uncle's ghost stood at the foot of my bed, pointing towards the village. My name is Kofi. I had just returned to my village after studying in the city for 3 years. The village was small and quiet, nothing like the busy city. My family was happy to see me. My mother hugged me tight, and my father smiled proudly. My younger siblings jumped around, excited to hear my stories. The first night back home, I slept deeply. But in the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly. My uncle's ghost was there, at the foot of my bed. His eyes were sad, and he pointed towards the village. I tried to speak, but no words came out. I closed my eyes, hoping it was just a bad dream. When I opened them again, he was gone. The next morning, I told my mother about the ghost. She looked worried and told me not to speak of it. My father shook his head and said I must have been dreaming. But I knew what I saw. I spent the day meeting old friends. Everyone was curious about my time in the city. We laughed and shared stories, but I couldn't shake the image of my uncle's ghost. That night, I heard whispers about strange things happening in the village. Animals missing, crops failing, and people falling sick. My friend Kwame told me about the strange events. Kofi, something is wrong here. Ever since your uncle died, bad things have been happening, he said. I remembered my uncle's ghost and felt a chill run down my spine. At dinner, I asked my grandmother about my uncle's death. She looked at me with sad eyes and said, "Your uncle's death was not normal, Kofi. There are things you do not understand." I pressed her for more, but she refused to say anything else. The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was something everyone was hiding. That night, I had another dream. My uncle's ghost was back, pointing towards the village again. This time, he spoke. "Find the truth, Kofi. Only you can end this." I woke up drenched in sweat. The ghost's message was clear. I had to find out what happened to my uncle and why he haunted me. The village held secrets, and I was determined to uncover them. The night my uncle's ghost spoke to me, I knew I had to find out the truth. The next morning, I sat with my grandmother. She was cooking breakfast, and the smell of fried plantains filled the air. I asked her again about my uncle. This time, she didn't look away. She sighed deeply and sat down next to me. "Kofi, our family has a dark history," she began. "Many years ago, our village and the neighboring village had a big fight over land. Your uncle was in the middle of it. He wanted peace, but the fight grew worse." I listened carefully, feeling a knot in my stomach. One night, she continued, "Your uncle went to the neighboring village to talk. He never came back. We found him the next day in the forest. He was dead, with strange marks on the ground around him. The elders said it was a curse." I remembered the symbols in my dreams and felt a chill. "What kind of curse?" I asked. "They say a witch doctor from the neighboring village cast the curse," she said. "He wanted revenge for losing the land. Since then, bad things have happened to our family." I thought about the strange events Kwame had mentioned. "But why is my uncle's ghost haunting me?" I asked. "The curse was meant to bring suffering to our family for generations," she said. "Your uncle's spirit is trapped, seeking revenge. Only the living can free him." I felt a weight on my shoulders. "What can I do?" I asked. "You must find out the truth about your uncle's death and the curse," she said. "But be careful. The neighboring village still holds anger towards us." I nodded, determined to uncover the secrets. That evening, I told Kwame everything. He was shocked but agreed to help. "We need to talk to the elders," he said. "They might know more about the curse and the symbols." We visited the oldest man in our village, Grandpa Mensa. He had seen many things in his long life. When we asked about the curse, he looked at us with sad eyes. The curse is real, he said. Your uncle was a good man, but he got caught in a bad fight. The witch doctor used dark magic to trap his spirit. If you want to end this, you must go to the neighboring village and find the witch doctor. The thought of going to the enemy village scared me, but I knew it was the only way to free my uncle's spirit and end the curse. The journey would be dangerous, but Kwame and I were ready to face it. When I woke up with symbols scratched into my arms, I knew the curse was real. That morning, I showed Kwame the marks on my arms. He looked worried. Kofi, this is getting worse. We need to act fast. I agreed. The ghost, the symbols, and the curse were all connected. We decided to visit the neighboring village the next day. But first, I wanted to learn more about the symbols. We went to see Grandma again. When she saw the marks, her face grew pale. These symbols are dangerous, she said. They are part of the curse. You must be careful, Kofi. I asked her if she knew what the symbols meant. She shook her head. Only the witch doctor knows. He uses these symbols to control spirits and cast curses. That night, I had another dream. My uncle's ghost appeared, pointing towards the village again. This time, he said, "Hurry, Kofi. Time is running out." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I knew we had to leave soon. The next morning, Kwame and I prepared for our journey. We packed food and water, knowing we might be gone for a while. As we walked through the village, people watched us with fear in their eyes. They knew we were going to the enemy village. Some of them whispered prayers for our safety. The path to the neighboring village was rough. We walked for hours, through thick forests and over rocky hills. As we got closer, the air felt colder, and an uneasy feeling settled over us. Finally, we reached the edge of the neighboring village. It looked similar to ours, but there was a heavy silence. We walked through the empty streets, feeling like we were being watched. We found the village elder, an old man with wise eyes. He listened to our story and nodded. The curse has caused much pain, he said. The witch doctor lives on the outskirts. But be warned, he is dangerous and does not welcome visitors. Despite our fear, we knew we had to go. The elder gave us directions, and we made our way to the witch doctor's hut. It was small and dark, with strange symbols painted on the walls. As we approached, the door creaked open. The witch doctor, an old and bitter man, stood there. His eyes were cold and full of hatred. "Why have you come?" he asked in a low, menacing voice. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "We need to know how to end the curse," I said. "My uncle's spirit is trapped, and our family is suffering. Please, help us." The witch doctor stared at us for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice chilling. "If you want to end the curse, you must complete a dangerous task. Are you willing to risk your lives?" Kwame and I exchanged a glance. Despite our fear, we nodded. "We will do whatever it takes," I said, determined to free my uncle and end the curse once and for all. When the witch doctor handed me the map, his eyes glowed with a strange light. He told us we had to find a sacred object deep in the forest. It was the only way to lift the curse. The map showed the way, but the path was full of dangers. As he handed it to me, his cold eyes seemed to see right through me. "Remember," he said, "the forest is alive. It will test you." We left the hut with heavy hearts, knowing the journey would be hard. Kwame and I decided to start early the next day. That night, we stayed with the village elder. He gave us food and a place to sleep. In the morning, we set out with the map. The forest was thick and dark, the air filled with strange sounds. The deeper we went, the more uneasy we felt. The trees seemed to close in on us, and the path was hard to follow. As we walked, we talked about the clues we had gathered. Kwame reminded me of what Grandma had said about the symbols. They were part of the curse used to control spirits. I thought about the marks on my arms and shivered. After a few hours, we found a small clearing. In the middle was a stone with more symbols carved into it. It looked just like the ones on my arms. "This must be a sign," Kwame said. "We are on the right track." We continued, keeping our eyes open for more clues. Suddenly, we heard a rustling in the bushes. We froze, our hearts pounding. Out of the shadows stepped a man. He was old and worn, but his eyes were kind. "I know why you're here," he said. "I was once cursed too. The object you seek is guarded by a spirit. It will not let you pass easily." The man told us about his own journey to find the object. He had failed, but he gave us advice on how to survive. "Be brave," he said. "Trust each other. The forest will try to break you, but you must stay strong." We thanked him and moved on, more determined than ever. As night fell, we found a place to rest. I thought about my uncle's ghost and the task ahead. The forest was dark and full of dangers, but we had to keep going. The curse had to be lifted, no matter the cost. We fell asleep under the stars, hoping to find the sacred object and free my uncle's spirit. When I woke up with the symbols glowing on my arms, I knew the forest was watching us. Kwame and I continued deeper into the forest. The path grew more difficult, with thick roots and thorny bushes blocking our way. The air was heavy, and strange sounds echoed around us. The forest felt alive, just like the witch doctor had warned. As we walked, I kept thinking about the symbols on my arms. They glowed faintly, guiding us through the dense forest. We followed the map closely, looking for more signs. Soon, we reached a small stream. The water was clear, and the banks were lined with stones covered in the same symbols. We stopped to rest and drink. "These symbols are everywhere," Kwame said, looking around. "They must be leading us to the object." I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "We have to keep going," I said. "We are getting closer." As we moved on, the forest grew darker. The trees seemed to whisper, and shadows danced around us. Suddenly, we saw a cave hidden behind thick vines. The entrance was marked with more glowing symbols. "This must be it," I said. "The object is inside." We entered the cave cautiously. The air inside was cold and damp. As we walked deeper, the glowing symbols lit our way. Finally, we reached a large chamber. In the center was a pedestal with a small, carved stone on it. The stone pulsed with a strange light. Kwame stepped forward, but I grabbed his arm. "Wait," I said. "The old man said the object is guarded by a spirit." Just as I spoke, a cold wind swept through the chamber. A figure appeared, floating above the pedestal. It was a ghostly form, with hollow eyes and a mouth twisted in anger. "You shall not take the stone," the spirit hissed. "It belongs to the forest." Kwame and I stood our ground, facing the spirit. "We need the stone to lift the curse," I said firmly. "Please, let us take it." The spirit stared at us for a long moment. Then it spoke again. "To take the stone, you must prove your courage. Face your deepest fears and the stone will be yours." The chamber grew darker, and the ground beneath us began to shake. Shadows rose around us, taking on terrifying shapes. My heart pounded as I realized we had to face whatever came next to lift the curse and save my uncle's spirit. When the shadows in the cave took on the forms of our worst fears, I knew we were truly being tested. Kwame and I stood back to back, facing the shapes moving around us. The spirit watched, its eyes cold and unforgiving. My heart pounded as the shadows grew clearer, each one becoming something terrifying. In front of me, I saw the ghostly figure of my uncle, his face twisted in pain. He reached out to me, and I felt a wave of guilt and fear. "You couldn't save me," he whispered. "You'll fail again." Kwame was facing his own fear. I could hear him gasping, trying to stay strong. "Kofi, we need to stay focused," he said, his voice shaking. "These are just tricks." I nodded, trying to push the fear away. "You're right," I said. "We have to remember why we are here." Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward towards my uncle's ghost. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm here to make things right." The ghost paused, its eyes softening for a moment before disappearing. I looked over at Kwame. He was doing the same, facing his fear and speaking to it. Slowly, the shadows around us began to fade. Finally, the chamber was clear again. The spirit reappeared, looking less menacing. "You have proven your courage," it said. "The stone is yours." With a sense of relief, I walked to the pedestal and picked up the stone. It was warm in my hand, pulsing with energy. "Thank you," I said to the spirit. The spirit nodded. "Go now. Lift the curse and bring peace to your family." We left the cave, feeling a mix of exhaustion and triumph. As we walked back through the forest, the air seemed lighter, and the path clearer. The stone guided us, its light showing the way. When we finally reached the village, we went straight to the witch doctor's hut. He was waiting for us, his eyes sharp. "Did you get the stone?" he asked. I held it out. "Yes. Now lift the curse." The witch doctor took the stone and began to chant. The air around us crackled with energy. As he finished, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The marks on my arms faded, and a sense of peace washed over me. "The curse is lifted," the witch doctor said. "Your family is free." Kwame and I thanked him and returned to our village. That night, I had one last dream. My uncle's ghost appeared, smiling. "Thank you, Kofi. You saved us all." I woke up feeling lighter, knowing the curse was finally over. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. The journey had taught me that some things could only be ended through courage and truth. When we stepped into the neighboring village, it felt like walking into a lion's den. Kwame and I were tense, knowing that the villagers might not welcome us. The place looked similar to ours, but there was an eerie silence. People stared at us with suspicion and whispered among themselves. We headed straight for the elder's hut. As we walked, I felt the weight of the stone in my pocket, a reminder of our mission. The elder, an old man with wise eyes, sat outside his hut. He watched us approach, his face unreadable. "We seek your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We have lifted the curse and need to make peace." The elder's eyes softened a bit, but his face remained stern. "Many years of anger and pain cannot be erased so easily," he said. "But if you have truly lifted the curse, it is a start." He invited us inside and listened as we told him about our journey and the witch doctor's ritual. When we finished, he nodded slowly. The curse was a heavy burden for both our villages. Perhaps it is time for healing. Kwame and I exchanged a hopeful glance. "How can we start?" I asked. The elder thought for a moment. "First, you must speak to the families here who were hurt by the feud. Show them the stone and explain what you have done." We spent the rest of the day visiting homes, sharing our story. Some people were skeptical, but many listened. They saw the stone and heard about the witch doctor's ritual. Slowly, we felt a shift in the atmosphere. The villagers began to see us not as enemies, but as messengers of peace. That evening, the elder called a meeting in the village square. People gathered, curious and hopeful. He spoke about the feud, the curse, and our journey. It is time to end this cycle of hatred, he said. Let us find a way to live in peace. The villagers murmured in agreement. I felt a sense of relief. This was just the beginning, but it was a good start. As the meeting ended, the elder took us aside. You have done well, he said. But remember, peace is a journey, not a destination. Keep working towards it. We thanked him and prepared to return to our village. The path ahead would not be easy, but we were ready to walk it step by step towards a better future for both villages. When the witch doctor opened his door, his eyes burned with anger. Kwame and I stood firm, holding the stone tightly. We were back in the neighboring village, ready to face the witch doctor who had cast the curse. He stared at us, his face twisted with bitterness. Why have you returned? He growled. I lifted the curse. You should be gone. I took a deep breath. We are here to end this cycle of revenge once and for all. Your curse has hurt both villages for too long. The witch doctor's eyes narrowed. You think a simple gesture can undo years of pain? We have to try, Kwame said, stepping forward. Our villages deserve peace. The witch doctor laughed, but there was no joy in it. Peace? Do you know what they did to us? The suffering they caused. We know, I said softly. But continuing this feud only brings more pain. You have the power to help us heal. For a moment, the witch doctor seemed to waver. His eyes flickered with something, perhaps regret. Then, he turned away. Leave me, he said. There is nothing more to say. I felt a surge of frustration. You have the chance to make things right, I insisted. Please, help us bring peace. The witch doctor paused, his back still turned. What do you propose? He asked quietly. Kwame and I exchanged a hopeful glance. Come with us to our village, I said. Meet with our elders. Show them you are willing to end this. The witch doctor turned slowly, his face unreadable. And if I refuse? Then the cycle of revenge continues, I said. But if you come, we can start to heal. There was a long silence. Finally, the witch doctor nodded. Very well. I will come. We returned to our village with the witch doctor. The journey was tense, but we all knew it was necessary. When we arrived, our elders were waiting. The villagers watched as the witch doctor approached, whispers spreading through the crowd. Our head elder stepped forward, his face serious. You have caused us much pain, he said to the witch doctor. But today, we seek peace. The witch doctor nodded. And I am here to seek forgiveness. Let us end this feud. There was a murmur of surprise and relief. The elders invited the witch doctor to sit with them. They talked for hours, discussing ways to heal the wounds between our villages. As the sun set, I felt a sense of hope. The path to peace was long, but this was a crucial first step. We had faced our fears and brought our villages together. Now, it was time to work towards a future free from the shadows of the past. When the elders revealed the task, my heart sank. The witch doctor had agreed to help us mend the feud, but there was one final challenge. The elders gathered us in the village square, their faces grave. To truly bring peace, Elder Mensa said, you must retrieve a sacred object from the heart of the forest. It is guarded by spirits and creatures of darkness. Kwame and I exchanged a worried glance. We had faced many dangers already, but this sounded like our greatest challenge yet. What is this object? I asked, my voice steady despite my unease. Elder Mensa hesitated, then spoke. It is a sacred gemstone, said to hold the spirits of our ancestors. It must be returned to our village for peace to be restored. The task sounded daunting, but we knew there was no turning back. We will do it, Kwame said firmly, echoing my determination. The elders nodded. Take this map, Elder Mensa said, handing me a worn piece of parchment. It will guide you to the heart of the forest. Remember, courage and unity will see you through. We spent the night preparing for the journey. The villagers offered us supplies and prayers for protection. In the morning, we set out once again, following the map into the depths of the forest. The path was treacherous, with vines that seemed to reach out and trip us, and roots that twisted underfoot. The air grew thick with humidity, and strange sounds echoed through the trees. But we pressed on, our determination unwavering. After hours of walking, we reached a clearing unlike any we had seen before. Trees towered around us, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. In the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, on top of which glowed a faint light. That must be it, Kwame whispered, awe and apprehension in his voice. We approached cautiously, feeling the presence of unseen eyes watching us. As we reached out to touch the gemstone, a voice echoed in our minds. Who dares to disturb this sacred place? A spirit materialized before us, its form shimmering with an otherworldly light. Only the brave and true of heart may take the gemstone, it intoned. Prove yourselves worthy. Kwame and I exchanged a determined look. We knew what we had to do. With courage in our hearts, we faced the trials set before us by the Spirit, determined to bring the sacred gemstone back to our village and fulfill our quest for peace. As we grasped the sacred gemstone, a darkness enveloped the forest. The Spirit's trials tested our resolve, but Kwame and I stood strong together. With each challenge overcome, the forest seemed to grow darker, as if warning us of the dangers ahead. But we knew we couldn't turn back now. With the gemstone in hand, its gentle glow guiding us, we retraced our steps through the labyrinthine forest. The journey back felt longer, the shadows more ominous. Yet, we pressed on, fueled by our determination to bring peace to our villages. When we finally emerged from the forest, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the village square. The elders and villagers had gathered, their faces filled with hope and apprehension. We have returned, I announced, holding out the gemstone. The spirit's trials were fierce, but we have brought the sacred object. The villagers murmured in awe as Elder Mensa stepped forward to receive the gemstone. He held it up to the fading light, and its glow intensified, bathing the square in a warm, comforting aura. This gemstone holds the spirits of our ancestors, Elder Mensa declared. With its return, may our villages find healing and unity. The villagers cheered, relief evident on their faces. Kwame and I exchanged a tired but satisfied smile. Our journey had been long and arduous, filled with challenges and dangers. But in the end, we had succeeded. That night, the villagers celebrated together, sharing food, stories, and laughter. The feud that had torn them apart for so long was finally beginning to heal. As I looked around at the faces of my fellow villagers and those from the neighboring village, I felt a profound sense of peace. The next day, the elders from both villages gathered to formally declare an end to the feud. They signed a pact of friendship and cooperation, pledging to work together for the prosperity of all. As Kwame and I stood among them, I knew that our journey had not only brought peace to our villages but had also taught us the true meaning of courage, unity, and forgiveness. Together, we had faced our fears and overcome them, proving that even the darkest of curses could be lifted with determination and a willing heart.